Let me ask you a question. Do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe in demons, gods, or witches? I guess a better way to ask it is, do you believe in the supernatural? As the Halloween season rolls in, lots of people ask this question. Some of them go to haunted houses trying to scare themselves into thinking they saw a ghost, or conduct seances trying to contact the dead. And all of this implies a belief in the supernatural. But today we're going to look at this through a philosophical lens, specifically a metaphysical lens. Metaphysics being the study of reality itself and the question of what is reality. But today we're going to ask what it means to have a supernatural existence. What does it mean to even ask what is the supernatural? And we're going to look at what a specific philosopher, René Descartes, thought of this question as well. After that, I'm going to give my opinion on the issue because I'm always right. So strap in. Welcome back to another episode of Philosophy in the Closet. I'm your host, Jack. Yes, this is again for a school project. I don't care, and I will never care. Enjoy. Let's try that. So, what does it mean to even ask the question, is there such a thing as the supernatural? Well, first we have to define what supernatural means. The New Oxford definition is events, forces, or powers that cannot be explained by the laws of science and that seem to involve gods or magic. In the context of philosophical thought, supernatural can be defined as anything that exists outside the natural world. This definition can be unclear when discussing certain concepts. For instance, ghosts are undoubtedly supernatural, but would you call consciousness natural or supernatural? It exists in the way that we experience it and we may have it as an attribute, but it's not measurable in the same way that something like brain activity is. If we follow Descartes' philosophical method of disregarding that which we cannot prove to be true, then perhaps we should err on the side of caution when it comes to concepts like consciousness. For example, there's a very large historical record of concepts once thought to be supernatural, eventually being proven to just be a natural phenomenon. Second, we have to explain if supernatural existence is provable at all. What does it mean for something supernatural to exist, since things that exist can be measured and predicted? Something being supernatural implies that it does not follow natural law. So, how do we know what to look for, if there is anything to look for at all? A dismissive perspective may take this position and then brush away the idea of anything supernatural, since if it cannot be measured and observed, then how can we treat its existence as real? Which is an understandable perspective. I mean, why should we care about the supernatural if it does not really affect us? Even though supernatural concepts may be unprovable by definition, there is still utility in discussing this topic. The limitations of our natural understanding draw a pretty clear line in the sand on what we can consider supernatural. It seems fair to conclude that anything we cannot observe or measure may be supernatural. Additionally, whether or not the supernatural exists in the literal sense, it still influences humans. And for this reason, people may consider supernatural ideas to be true. For these reasons, I consider this thought experiment to be useful. Now we can talk about René Descartes' perspective on the supernatural. Descartes was obsessed with discovering the fundamentals of our existence, and was also very critical of any fact that he was to accept. He began this journey by concluding that our existence is the only thing we can be sure of, since we are thinking, and there has to be somebody to be doing the thinking. He summed up this idea in his quote, "I think, therefore I am." I didn't know you would chew like that. Additionally, he developed Cartesian dualism, an idea that is quite complex, but that is extremely relevant to our discussion. In simple terms, he proposed that categorical differences should be seen as separate. For example, he proposed that the mind is separate from the body, since although they are tightly linked, the mind is immaterial, and thus should be separate. Using the definition of supernatural that we outlined earlier, Descartes would almost certainly affirm that the mind is supernatural. Okay, so then using Descartes' logic, what else could we consider supernatural? Well, gods and ghosts would not be considered supernatural since, although they are immaterial, they are not tightly linked to us in the same way that the mind is. Additionally, emotions would not be considered supernatural since, although they are tightly linked to us, they are not immaterial. There are neurological explanations for emotions. I suppose you could argue that the past could be supernatural since it is tightly linked to us and it does not exist in a physical sense anymore, although this is a bit of a stretch. I thought long and hard about what could be considered supernatural other than the mind, and besides the past, which again is a bit of a stretch, I couldn't think of anything. So I encourage you all to try and think of answers and let me know in the comments below. I hold the belief that what we experience is reality, and there is nothing supernatural about it. Although it may sound calloused, I would need to be convinced by evidence of supernatural phenomena, and that evidence just does not exist. Although philosophy is one of the best tools to reach conclusions about ethics, behavior, and experience, it cannot explain the supernatural. And that is perfectly fine. Inexplainability is the hallmark of the supernatural, and to stress about whether or not it is real only serves to distract from its wonder. This does not mean to abandon reason and to reject science, but instead to be more aware of your own special experiences, and that sometimes life just feels like magic. As my good friend Peyton always says, "Don't think about it too hard, because that'll hurt." So go out there and feel the magic.